More on the decision by Kadyn Proctor to leave the University of Iowa and head back to Alabama. We break it down. Plus, the tournaments are here, both basketball and wrestling. We break it all today down on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Just takes you a moment, and it helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Well, it is a day later after the decision that shocked most everybody inside of Hawkeye Nation and really across the country. Kadyn Proctor lasted all of 2 months in Iowa City, and he said that's enough of that. He's heading back to Alabama. The former five-star offensive lineman, a 14-game starter a year ago from the Crimson Tide, looked to really solidify what Iowa was going to be. And after all the hand-wringing that we saw throughout the day, over the last couple of days, certainly I think it slowed down a little bit. The frustration's still there from a fan perspective, and definitely get that. But this young man that made a choice, and he is just that, is not a kid. Is he getting the best advice? I think that can be questioned, but we're here to worry about the Hawkeyes, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. I've seen a lot of angst about people that donated to the Hawkeye Collective, Iowa Swarm, and people that were upset believing that the funds that they had given were taken away, that were given to a guy that never played a snap for Iowa football, for a guy that never even had an official practice with Iowa football, and thought that their funds were, in a way, put out there and taken away and taken off the board. And Brett Heinrichs, who runs the Iowa Swarm, let it be known that that is not the case. So this comes from an email from him that came out on would have been Wednesday morning, and talking about a little bit here. And I'm just going to read through this because I think it really paints the picture of the way that this played out. And not just with Kadyn Proctor, but just in general, because we get these questions all the time. What is this? Well, it's the new reality. And you don't have to like it, but if you want Iowa to be competitive, this is the way that it's going to be done. Is it going to continue with this path? I don't think so. I think eventually we'll get to a spot where we will have student athletes that will be employees. And that's going to be an whole different can of worms to open up, but I think eventually we will get there. But we also, I believe, will see that these collectives are going to go in-house and they will be handled by the athletic department. And this will be something that will be handled at that point. But right now we don't have that because we don't have leadership from the NCAA, and we are left with this crazy world that we're dealing with right now inside of college athletics. From the email, collective and ink side. As many of you are aware, Swarm operates with both the collective side, which relies on your generous contributions, and the ink side, where corporations contract the student athletes. The Kadyn Proctor situation. This is a bullet point number 2. I want to address the concerns surrounding Kadyn Proctor's involvement. Firstly, it's important to note that he has not received any funds from the Swarm Collective. Your donations have been used as intended and have not been misused. Kadyn has received a portion of his Swarm Inc. allotment from a sponsoring business. However, there may be potential clawbacks on this payment, and there will be no further payments made in this regard. Athlete contracts. Point number 3. Our contracts include language that automatically terminates if a student athlete no longer resides within a small radius of Iowa City. This ensures that our resources are directed appropriately and that athletes can effectively fulfill their obligations. We do not plan to share the terms of these contracts or the payments associated. And finally, point number 4, cancellation and reconsiderations. We've experienced several cancellations in the last 24 hours. I urge those reconsidering to understand that we take the stewardship of your donation seriously. Our commitment remains unwavering towards supporting Iowa athletics and the Eastern Iowa community. That is from Brad Heinrichs of the Iowa Swarm, who runs it. He does it out of his own pocket. He does not take an income. He's a guy that you hate to say saved Iowa athletics, but when he put this together, a year and a half ago, Iowa did not have a collective. And as you look around the world of athletics and college athletics, it's a necessity. You cannot operate at any kind of sustainable level without a collective. And for people on the fence, and if you have the money to do it, it's the way business is being done. You don't have to like it. You can complain about it and go have your coffee, go have a beer with somebody and yell and scream and do your thing. But come live in reality with us. And that's where we are. This is the way that business is done. The Kadyn Proctor situation stinks. And it stinks for Iowa on the football field. You bring in an offensive lineman of his skill, his ilk, his power, all the things that he can do physically. And this offensive line looked like it maybe had a chance for the first time in a long time to at minimum be okay. And I think even better than that. I think Kadyn Proctor would have done just that. The domination that he showed during his true freshman season playing in the SEC at Alabama, the improvements that he made from September by the time he was playing in January were immense. And you put him into the Iowa system, you plug him at the left tackle position, it would have cured so many ills of this Iowa offensive line. Instead, it's more the same. It's Mason Richmond going back to left tackle. We saw last year. I know he was injured. He was banged up. But at left tackle, we just haven't seen the juice. This is a guy that's played a lot of football. He's made a lot of career starts. And he has certainly not been at the level that you anticipate a guy with this many reps would be playing at. On the right side, Jennings Dunker. Is he going to be a guy that can take that big size that he has and a pretty good run blocker? Can he be, at minimum, okay in pass protection? They're going to need that going forward with the evolution, as we hope, with the offense. Connor Colby took the lead. We found out early in his career he's not a tackle, but he's a pretty dang good guard. Now we have an open spot at the other tackle spot. That's going to be a big question, certainly about what they're going to do at the other guard spot, I should say. Tackle is figured out there, but it's really important. Who's that other guy going to be? Logan Jones in the middle. I still think that Iowa needs to take a look and see if potentially you have the better center option with Tyler Ellsbury. I really liked what we saw out of him a season ago. And if they go that direction, if Ellsbury is the guy at center, you put Jones at guard, if that's something that can lead to some improvement. Nick DeYoung, when he decided he was going to come back for his bonus COVID year, at first it was kind of a whole lot of eye roll, and especially when Proctor was making his way to campus and he felt good about the offensive line. What's going on here? Well, he hasn't been great, but it's a body, and it's a body that has experience at minimum. There's another guy you throw in the mix. Bo Stevens, another guy that needs to be mentioned. He's battled injury certainly throughout his career, but he's got a couple of starts, I think 4 career starts under him. Cade Pieper, we saw him show up in the depth chart towards the end of last season, and then you get into some of the young guys and hoping they pop. The one that I maybe wonder about the most is Trevor Lauk. Indianapolis kid, really highly regarded, one of the better recruits that Iowa's got a commitment with, and a commitment that stayed in Trevor Lauk. And if he is a guy, look, it's a big step up. We're talking about a redshirt freshman here, but maybe is he a guy that can come in there and at minimum, do what we saw with some past guys. They start off their career inside at a guard position, and then after some older guys move out, they jump back out the tackle position. That's one that I'm keeping an eye on here this spring, because at least accolades coming out of high school, Trevor Lauk definitely had a bunch of those. It impacts this offensive line so much, and it leaves you definitely wondering, can they be good offensively if your offensive line isn't even okay? It's a big question. You're changing systems. You're going through a lot of changes with this offense, and this is the last thing on the football field that Iowa needed. Ken Proctor's leaving. Nothing you can do. Do you go shopping in the portal? Iowa is over the scholarship limit, as we talked about a lot after the season went on, and you brought back all the guys for a bonus season. When you did that, it's led to a scholarship crunch. I think Iowa still needs to be shopping. They need to be looking to get that offensive line better. The problem is, Everybody wants offensive linemen. You look across the country, I think everybody's wish list when we get the next portal season that'll open up here next month is everybody's going to be looking for offensive linemen. Does Iowa and the Swarm Collective have the funds to go out there and get one of those impact offensive linemen? You're going to be dealing with a lot. Ohio State's still going to be looking in there. The SEC schools are going to be looking in there to find their guys and find it. It's going to cost some money to make that happen. And we know definitely need to add some depth at wide receiver position. I think that's something they're also going to be looking at. Do they go back to cornerback, something that they weren't able to get a year ago? Backup quarterback, another spot that definitely Iowa could be looking at. But this is an impactful loss. It's one thing to say, hey, doesn't want to be here, don't want him. But this impacts the team in a major way on the football field. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes and get into the basketball. Iowa women await the winner of the 16 versus 16 matchup with UT Martin and Holy Cross. We'll talk a little bit about Iowa and their opening weekend of the NCAA tournament, and your last opportunity to see Caitlin Clark and Carver Hawkeye Arena comes up on Saturday and likely, highly likely, on Monday in the round of 32. The Iowa men with the win. They get Utah coming up this weekend. We got a start time on that one, plus some basketball news as DeSante Bowen, his career at the University of Iowa has come to an end. We'll do that, plus talk a little wrestling to wrap things up. It's a busy one. Tournament time is here. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that pushed it further than the rest. Just like the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Oregon Ducks are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised all of us with a powerful performance in the final Pac-12 tournament, punching their ticket to the big dance. They say, win life, go Rogue. And that's exactly what the Ducks have done. Dana Altman, by the way, 7-0 at Oregon in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Maybe a little something to take a look at there as you're making your brackets and putting them together for the final time as things get ready to tip off here a little bit later today. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. That's NissanUSA.com. Again, shop NissanUSA.com. NissanUSA.com. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 on to use however you want. Point spreads, money lines, futures. You can even pick who's going to win it all in those futures market and a whole lot more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Trent Condon back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. All right, let's get into the basketball as we were just talking about it there with FanDuel. No line out yet for the Iowa women, though they are the betting favorite, them and LSU, to win the regional over at FanDuel. Don't have a line because we don't know who they're going to play in the opening round as we await coming up here this evening, Thursday night. We'll get to see UT Martin in their matchup as they face off against Holy Cross, and the winner will get the Hawkeyes then for that afternoon game on Saturday. Still, with all that being said, going through and looking the way this thing is set up for Iowa. We talked about it on Monday, obviously, what they're going to face in front of them, but I told you at that time, look, in the Elite Eight, you get there, you don't got to play one team. Look, LSU is not going to go together with UCLA and create some kind of super team. Now, you can argue that LSU already has a super team. I guess you could go that direction and say that, but that aside, you'll have to play one of them. Whoever comes out of the bottom side of the bracket, you get there, that's who you're going to play. And because of that, I think it's something that we need to definitely get into a little bit more. Speaking of that futures market, I'm bringing it up right now. Iowa is the second betting choice to win the national championship. South Carolina, -145. That means you got to lay $145 to win $100, or lay $14.50 to win $10 back if you're a little bit on the smaller scale of things. LSU and Iowa are both 7-1 to win the national championship this year. To win the region, though, to get back to the Final Four, coming out of what they're calling Albany 2. which getting to Albany, I took a look at some flights. Whew, it's going to be pricey. You're going to make your way out to New York, at least here from central Iowa, coming out of Des Moines. Iowa now the betting favorite at plus 115. Earlier in the week, Iowa and LSU had the same betting odds to win the region. Now the Hawkeyes plus 115 over at FanDuel. LSU is plus 155. A little bit surprised UCLA, a much longer price at plus 390, nearly 4-1 for UCLA, the 2 seed to come out. K-State is 20-1, Colorado 30-1, Louisville is 100-1 to come out of it, and you go down from there. Creighton also sits at 100-1, 150-1 for UNLV, and down we go from that. So that is the way that it's set up. How about Drake? You want to go in the Bulldogs? Well, 25,000 plus 25,000, not too bad. 250-1 for the Dogs to cut down the nets and make their way to the Final Four. Joking aside, this team has had a lot of time off. 3 games in 3 days. You bounce back. You get your feet back underneath them. The great thing about earning that number 1 seed and taking on the likely tomato can that you're going to see in the first round is you get time to shake off that rust, right? Go out there, play a game that you're going to be able to dominate, play a game that you should be able to go out there and just kind of do whatever you want to against it. It really sets up in a way where I was going to be able to do that, and it's going to set up in that way. I truly believe that they're going to get off to a good start in that one, and then we'll see. Is it going to be Princeton, going to be West Virginia? We'll get into that a little bit more tomorrow as we look forward to the bracket. Let's jump over to the men's side of things. Desante Bowen has announced his intention that he has entered the transfer portal and will be looking for a new home. Now, this is one of the more disappointing recruiting stories for me in the Fran McCaffrey era. We go back and all the close recruiting misses, and there's been plenty of them throughout time with Fran McCaffrey and trying to get that point guard, right? And we saw Mike Gasell for a long time. We saw Bryce Cartwright early in his tenure. It was Clemens and Gasell, though, in the backcourt for a number of years together, into Jordan Bohannon and Jay Bo sticking around for 6 years. We saw a whole lot, right? And Desante Bowen, a top 100 kid, a kid that Fran identified early. Fran McCaffrey is so good at identifying talent, and that next rung of player. Look, anybody can go to an AAU event and you can see the top level guys. It doesn't take any kind of basketball genius to be able to do that. But when you look at those next tier guys, Fran has done such a nice job of finding the right players, the right kind of guys for the system, and then being able to develop them and turn them into good Big Ten players. And we've seen that throughout his whole tenure. Desante Bowen is a guy that identified early, had some nice offers coming out from the East Coast, and it really felt like he was going to be a guy that could take the reins, and he could be a guy that is a difference maker at the point guard position. Now, for all the success of Jordan Bohannon, he's not your traditional point guard. Great shooter from the outside, we know that, but defensive liabilities that he had, a lack of end-to-end quickness compared to some other point guards out there. There were limitations to his game, even as good as he was. Assist numbers, three-pointers, and for many people, maybe one of their favorite Hawkeyes. He did the right thing and did a great thing, missing the free throw to, excuse me, to maintain the record for Chris Street, something that certainly won't be forgot by me, and I think a lot of Hawkeye fans out there. It was a great deed. He was a great Hawkeye. But you're hoping for something a little bit different, and it looked like Bowen was going to be that guy. Injured late this season. He was a starter at the beginning of the year, and I thought we saw some good things out of him, but many of the same issues continue to crop up. Dribbling into nowhere, getting off his feet, not knowing where he was going with the basketball, things that you just can't do in the Fran McCaffrey system. So it's back to the drawing board again. And though they went throughout the back half of the season with Tony Perkins running the point, and we saw good things out of Tony, I don't think he's right now physically. I think he's banged up, and I think you've seen that over the last couple of weeks, that he is certainly physically not at 100% at this point in time. I'd love Tony Perkins to come back for another season. I think that would be a great thing for this team and for this program. I think there's enough there, but is it time to hand the keys to Brock Harding? Are you looking for a stopgap, a one-year guy that's going to come in the backcourt? Now with 2 open scholarships, that's what they have if Tony Perkins comes back. If he doesn't, it's 3 open scholarships that you're going to have to play around with in the portal here. What I was going to do. Are they going to bank one? Are they going to go out and get a player or 2? I think you would look at maybe a big. That could be certainly a direction that you could go. You bring in 2 power forward types in Cooper Koch along with Chris Tajo, and both of those guys, probably power forward is the likely destination. Now, they're different, completely different kind of players, and probably guys that can play together if you want to go big. play one at the small forward, play one at the power forward position. I think he could get away with that, certainly in the future with both of those guys. Koch, he's more of a shooter. In fact, an elite level shooter from everything he's done at the high school and the grassroots events throughout his career. He's a guy that can really fill it up from the outside. And then you go the other direction, and you got Tajo, who is just an elite athlete, great athleticism, good rebounder, good defender. Offensive game is still developing for Tajo. So you got both those guys coming in. But who would you want to pair at the center position if you're going to go two bigs again like they did throughout most of the season with Owen Freeman? Is it a guy that can step out, more of a stretch five type of player? I think you do need to identify somebody that can play defense, that can rebound, because your backups right now are Evan Bronze, who was a walk-on. There was a scholarship available. They gave it to him, local kid coming back home. And you have Riley Mulvey, who redshirted this year, and very difficult to get much hope out of Riley Mulvey that he's going to be any kind of impactful player for Iowa throughout the remaining portion of his career. So that's what you have there. Do you go there, and then what kind of guard makes sense here? Do you need more shooting? How many minutes are we going to think that Cooper Koch is going to get on his first year in campus? Because we saw it this year. When Iowa makes three-pointers, this is a great, that's a relative term, a really good basketball team, a good college basketball team, a team good enough. They just didn't shoot it well enough from the outside. And even as good as they were offensively, this was not a great three-point shooting team. I think that's an angle that you're also looking at in the portals, finding that knockdown shooter, somebody that you can pair with Josh Dix and Peyton Sanford if he comes back for another season. That's where you're looking at. There's going to be teams that I think are going to fall in love with Peyton Sanford at the NBA level. He's going to go through the draft process. I don't think there's any doubt that that's going to happen, but I think he's also going to come back. So we still have that out there, still to be figured out. But with the quick release that he has, a good rebounder, not a great athlete by any means, but a guy that just has effort and that quick shooting touch. It's not the long kind of shot that you see from some guys out there. He is so quick with it. I think there's going to be teams that definitely like what they see out of him. Still, there's basketball to be played, and that's the exciting part of this too, is I was able to keep going. And the bracket opened up for them last night as Villanova went down in the NIT. They were the number one seed there. So now Iowa, if they go out to Utah coming up this weekend. So that game will be played on Sunday night at 8 o'clock Central Time is when we'll see the Hawkeyes out at Utah in Salt Lake City taking on the Utes. If Iowa wins that game, though, they'll be hosting. That's right. They will be hosting then in the NIT quarterfinal round with the trip to Indianapolis and the NIT Final Four on the line. They will take on the winner of South Florida as they will go up. South Florida will be taking on the team that beat Villanova. VCU, there it is. One of those moments, right? Man, it happens from time to time. VCU, UCFI will get the winner of that one. And as the number 3 seed, both of those teams unseeded, I would have the opportunity mid-next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, to be able to host that quarterfinal game. It's going to take a lot to get by Utah. A really good team. We talked about them a little bit last night after they polished it off and got their victory against UC Irvine, a team that was on the bubble for a long portion of the season, kind of like Iowa, but better defensively, not as good offensively. That's where you're going to get out of Utah. It's simple. The three-point regression, I think, is going to tell a lot about that basketball game. But, we talked about this yesterday. The everydayers, you know this. I asked you, what would an NIT run mean? It could create a little bit of buzz, get something going here. Iowa men's basketball very much needs that. Continuing here, Locked On Hawkeyes, the NCAA Wrestling Tournament also begins today. We'll give you a quick peek at the wrestling tournament, what it's going to take, and some numbers also in the gambling space out there for wrestling. That's right. We'll talk about that as we roll through. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick. You just plug into your existing TV, and it's going to provide access to millions of movies, TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels that deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here on Locked On, most of the big pro leagues out there, college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and a whole lot more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV, you definitely should. Trust me on this one. To learn more, visit amazon.com/lockedon Fire TV. That's amazon.com/lockedon Fire TV. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As we wrap things up, a little wrestling for you. And as we know, the path to win a national championship isn't going to happen. Let's be frank, it's not. Penn State is going to run away with the title. They're going to dominate. And saw some numbers from Circus Sports that they tell you exactly that. They have some odds up of who's going to score the most points, and they list 8 teams all predicted to be below Penn State coming up this year. NC State, Iowa, Michigan, Iowa State, Cornell, Nebraska, Oklahoma State, and Lehigh. Those teams listed. Out of that group of 8, who finishes with the most team points? Basically, who's going to finish in second place. So that is up there. The Hawkeyes are the second betting choice. Them in Michigan plus 450 for both of them. I was surprised to see NC State is the betting favorite currently on that one. And they also had some head-to-head matchups, including Iowa State, who's going to score the most team points at nationals. And Iowa State was the favorite, minus 125 for them. Iowa, a minus 105. So that is out there right now if you want to get into the gambling space. But more importantly, talking about the matchups here. And at 125 pounds, you start, obviously, after Spencer Lee's incredible run. Looking back, and just 125 has been just such a great weight for Iowa throughout the years. And Corey Clark, Thomas Gilman, into Spencer Lee, what those guys were able to do, going back to Mac McDonough. This has been really good. And you have Drake Allel coming in as the number 3 seed. Had a shoulder injury a couple of years ago. Has been battling through that. But the matchups and the way that this path starts up, a quarterfinal matchup, maybe against Oklahoma State's Prattley. I think a really good shot in that one. He dominated the match down in Stillwater as Iowa had, I think, their best meet of the year in that one. Drake Allel is a guy I think we really need to circle about his potential of getting here and getting to the championship. I think there's a real shot there, and keeping that string together of getting guys into the finals and wrestling on Saturday night. What about Brody Teske at 133? He is, I think, seated incorrectly in that one. We'll see if he can get in, be an All-American. I think that would be an accomplishment for Brody in his potentially last go-around. At 141, Real Woods, it's been a disappointing end to his season, certainly this year. We know the talent's there. We've seen it before. Can he get back there again? And ultimately, can he win a national championship? Caleb Ratchey, a kid that I watched a lot wrestle here in Central Iowa. Really good at this point. And another one. Going to be on the fringes there. Maybe gets to the blood round. I think that would be an accomplishment if he can get past that. Get All-American status. That would be a real big one there. 157 with Franek. Another one that we're just talking about getting on the podium. And it's unfortunate that that's what we're talking about. But with the suspensions this year, I definitely think that is something there. Franek finished with the 10 seed going into the bracket. Can he get in the top 8? I think definitely he can back there as well. At 165, this one is a whole lot different. Caliendo, the path I think is going to be incredibly difficult for him. Again, you think he'll be All-American. He's the number 6 seed. He can get to that spot. That's definitely an opportunity for him in that spot. 174, Phil Kennedy, easy got to root for to make him be able to get it going there. Can he get to the finals? Probably not. Can he have a big run? I think so. Going to be a weird bracket there at 174. And I mean, just the top half of the bracket is absolutely so loaded. Going to make it incredibly difficult for him. 184, don't have to worry about, as there's no Hawkeye there. 197, Zach Glazier. He's been one of probably the most feel-good stories of this season, the year that he put together this year. I think it was a huge surprise, what he was able to do this season. And I think a chance for him, not just to be an All-American, but finish a little bit higher up in that podium. Maybe get up to top 3. I think that would be a great one there. And then finally, Bradley Hill. For Bradley Hill, I think you're hoping win a couple of matches. That would certainly be an accomplishment. Get a couple of team points, help out a little bit on that way, probably on the back half of the bracket. Win a match or 2, it'd be good stuff over there. It's Penn State's to win. They're going to run away and hide. And it's interesting. I enjoy wrestling. Grew up in a wrestling town up in Osage. really enjoy the sport. But the way that this season has gone, coupled with just how clear cut Penn State is, boy, the buzz, at least in these parts that I've heard, there isn't a whole lot out there for this NCAA wrestling tournament. Well, we will break it all down. We will come back with you over on a Friday. We got a lot of football talk coming up. We're going to bring in our guy, our recruiting analyst here with Locked On. We'll talk with Brian Smith a little bit about the Kadyn Proctor decision, how it impacts Iowa, get into some football talk with him. And then we'll set up the weekend and preview of what we have going forward. That's coming up tomorrow on Locked On Hawkeyes. Hey, enjoy the NCAA tournament, both the men and the women and the wrestling. It is a great time. Now, the wrestling, it should be a month later, but that's a conversation for another day. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Hey, before we go, also want to let you know something really cool that we have going on right now with Locked On Sports Today. Look, you're watching Fox Sports, ESPN on your TV throughout the course of the day, and then you hear all that shouting and the screaming and the yelling and the fake debates. We don't do that here. We have a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day. It's going to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube and as well as the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, breaking down some more football, basketball, wrestling. We got you covered. We'll talk to you then. Go Hawks.